Welcome to the Yet to Be Named podcast. This is episode 1. We're very excited, and yes, I said the Yet to Be Named podcast because as of right now, we don't quite have a name. We are an orphan podcast, although we do have a parenting company in the Wall Radio Network. If you listen to this and you have suggestions for a name, feel free to go ahead and throw them on the iTunes feed or message We Are Libertarians on Facebook, and we'll figure out some sort of name. Hopefully after this first episode, we'll get a little bit more of a feel of where we're wanting to go, and that will be when we can put a more permanent name on things. But as of right now, we are nameless. I am Joe Ruiz. Jason Murrell is with me. Jason, say hello.
Hello.
This is going to be really exciting, guys. When we did the show report on the Wall Radio Network, it was me, Chris Bangle, and Ryan Ripley, and we had a great time. Unfortunately, Ryan Ripley has received a Big Daddy Mobucks job that is no longer allowing him to talk politics, and Ryan wasn't really all that interested in pop culture, entertainment, sports, and some of the things that I am interested in and that I couldn't really talk about on the show report. And so Chris Bangle says, why don't you just start your own podcast, and we'll put it on the network, and you can have an arts and culture type thing. So I brought in a couple of my buddies, Jason Murrell and his brother David, up in the South Bend area, and we are going to talk about any and everything, whatever we want, probably not too much politics because they've pretty much got that well tackled on the Wall Radio Network. But we're going to have a little bit of art, a little bit of entertainment, TV, movies, comic books, sports, pretty much everything else that you're not going to hear anywhere else on the Wall Radio Network. And that's what we're going to do. Jason, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Jason. I've lived in Indiana my whole life. I'm a huge sports fan. I've always loved the Cubs, and I've always loved the Colts. I'm also a comic book nerd. I claim that I coined the phrase, once you go geek, that's all you'll seek.
Does that work on the ladies?
Not even a little bit.
You know, when The Big Bang Theory became a thing on television and all of a sudden it was like a really popular TV show, I thought nerd is going to be the new sexy. Like, women are going to seek out comic book nerds, and if you flash like a Green Lantern comic, there's going to be 5 ladies grabbing onto you and fighting over you. Is that not the case?
Well, part of the reason I don't watch The Big Bang Theory is because it's made geeks cool, which is what I've been trying to do forever. So it just reminds me of my failures. But that, and I always claim I want to be the funniest geek you know.
You want to be the best?
Yes.
So Sheldon Cooper has nothing. He can't light a candle to Jason Murrell?
He's just a jerk. He's not funny.
Well, my name is Joe Ruiz. I am the managing editor at We Are Libertarians. And WeAreLibertarians.com started up about a year and a half ago, and I just kind of man the online stuff. But I have been knocking at the door as hard as I possibly could, trying to get on a podcast. We Are Libertarians podcast has a pretty faithful rotation of about 3 or 4 good people, and they're all awesome, and they're all really insightful. And I probably don't even have as much to offer that program as some of the greats like Greg Lenz or Chris Spangle do. But I wanted to do something that I was interested in. Of course, I love politics. That's why I ran for Congress in 2012. I wanted to make a positive change. That didn't work out exactly. I ran a third-party campaign, and here I am doing an arts and culture podcast. But my presence on the WeAreLibertarians.com website has always been fun, half-pop culture, half-politic articles such as The Government According to Taylor Swift or The Government Shutdown According to Katy Perry. And those are kind of my claim to fame on the We Are Libertarians roster because I was the only one that did that kind of thing. Jason, have you ever read any of my stuff?
I've read a little bit. I haven't read the 2 you just mentioned.
You probably shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. I want to go find them now, though.
You're going to go look them up?
Yes.
Well, what I did, I used their song titles, and I tried to make... I almost tried to make it seem as if... You ever seen Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd?
Yeah.
Where people would play The Wizard of Oz and
Yes.
Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah.
And they said that it was like written according to the movie to fit the movie. I try to make it so that when I write those articles, their song titles were predictions or prophetic listings of what would happen in government. So The Government Shutdown... When Katy Perry's album Prism came out, I tried to make it look as if all of her songs predicted the government shutdown in some way, shape, or form. So it's really kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But anyway, on this podcast, the Yet to Be Named podcast, we're going to discuss I mean, all kinds of things. Like I said, TV, relationships, cinema. And today we've got a few different topics for you that we just want to go ahead and dive into. And as you give us feedback and as we continue to grow on this podcast, it's going to be a lot easier to select content that we know you'll be engaged in. So we're just going to go ahead and dive into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about is this article that came up on openculture.com. And it's called Chaos Cinema, a breakdown of how 21st century action films became incoherent. That's a pretty bold statement, right?
Yeah.
Incoherent?
Incoherent.
I mean, superhero movies are like the biggest blockbusters of the summer.
They're all the rage.
So how would you think that someone would call that incoherent?
I don't know that it was so much directed at superhero movies, even though it did mention The Dark Knight. But I think where you have to be careful when you just knock movies with special effects, you know, if you look at like Spider-Man or Iron Man, you can't make those movies without special effects.
Sure.
And they look so real.
Well, you can't make them good. Have you ever seen the Spider-Man TV show from the 70s?
I've seen clips of it, yes. Yeah. Or the old Captain America.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, you don't want to go so overboard with it that there's nothing there as far, you know, story and content. You need something to grab onto.
Well, let me just read a segment of this article real quick
okay.
so that listeners know what I'm talking about. It says, I mean that the craft of action filmmaking has itself declined. You've surely felt that today's big-budget spectacles of chase, fight, and explosion, and then they specifically call out Transformers, the Jason Bourne films, the last few Bond movies, and the latest Batman trilogy. They say they don't thrill you as did those of decades past. And then they say that the good action flicks were Hard Boiled, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Wild Bunch, and Die Hard. But you can't pin down quite why. Why do you think that is? Are you a fan of like the Indiana Jones flicks?
I did enjoy the Indiana Jones movies.
Would you consider those action movies?
To a degree. I don't know what you would call it though. It's when you ask me about an action movie, it probably wouldn't come to mind.
Indiana Jones wouldn't come to mind as an action
probably
movie?
Not. I would think more of like the Die Hard.
Okay. Bruce Willis, Stallone,
yeah.
Chuck
Yeah.
Norris, those guys that were in their heyday back then. Arnold
Right.
Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Okay, those would be the action icons. Yeah, and that's probably why they all got together and made those Expendables movies, right? Did you see the Expendables?
I saw the first one.
And you didn't see the second one?
I won't go anywhere near it.
Okay, so I saw the first one, and I don't know where my mind was at on the day that I saw the first one, but I said, man, that was pretty cool, the way that they did that. And then someone came back to me when the second one came out and said that was the most god-awful movie I've ever seen, and you should not watch it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to trust that if number one was as good as it seemed the day that I saw it, it was probably a fluke. Or I was in a really, really good mood, and I had no critical lens on that day.
Yeah, the first Expendables movie, I gave it a shot, but I don't even know how to explain it. There is just nothing there for me.
Well, when I first read this article, it made sense to me because it called out Transformers, and because it used that as a measuring stick. I don't like the Transformers movies.
Neither do I.
It's not Shia LaBeouf or Megan Fox or anything like that makes me hate it. It's not the special effects. It's Michael Bay, the director. Because every time Michael Bay makes a movie, it's as if he says, to hell with the story. Yeah, we have to have a script in order to have something to follow. But as long as we can have a really big budget and put all these special effects into it and make it a summer blockbuster, the story's not going to matter. Nobody's going to care. And I hate that they continue to give him movies. And it was ever since I saw The Island. Do you remember The Island?
Yes.
That's when I started. It was like Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. And they had this Matrix 2-esque car scene, this chase scene. Mm-hmm. And it was just bad because it had a promising story. Like you thought the concept of these people who were stranded in this, like Earth wasn't Earth anymore. And they were in this kind of dome. And they all wanted to win a trip to like the last environmentally beautiful place on Earth. And it was like a lottery that they were holding inside of this dome, and people were so excited. But they were actually killing them off once they left the dome and won this trip to paradise. And I thought, man, that sounds kind of like neat science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Bay found a way to mess it up because he didn't pay close enough attention to the characters. He didn't really make you care about them. It was just like, oh, hey, this is character A. Oh, hey, this is character B. All right, action. And then from there, it was just bullets flying and cars crashing into each other, and it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Michael Bay has a tendency to do that. I mean, another example of a movie he's going to ruin is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where they're, according to internet rumors, not even going to be mutants. They're going to be like an alien race.
They're going to be a different species?
They're going to be turtles, but they're not going to be mutant turtles. They're going to be like alien turtles, at least according to the internet rumors.
So the ooze isn't even a factor?
Apparently not,
How do you do that?
I don't know, because it's not like the word mutant isn't right there in the title.
Yeah. Yeah, Teenage Alien Turtles.
Right.
How does one take something that's so iconic and decide he's just going to completely alter it to whatever he wants?
Well, I think he's had so much box office success with this formula. We're going to do special effects and worry less about the story, that he just keeps doing it.
Does that mean that I'm in the wrong here, or does that mean that the people spending money on these movies are not being smart with their dollars?
I would say the second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you agree then that the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers and the people of old that you talked about, those kinds of action flicks, that's going to be the action flicks that we should aspire to? Or do you think that the special effects and the things that we're doing currently are actually much more capable and more functional?
I think there's room for both. I don't think you necessarily have to go one way or the other.
So take Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes.
Okay, there's a good story there.
Yes.
Okay. And there's really great special effects, too.
Yes.
And I was pretty blown away by how much I enjoyed that more than the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi trilogy.
Right.
Spider-Man. I mean, that was good. Well, except Spider-Man 3. I didn't like Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
When he put on the Venom suit and he started dancing through the little jazz cafe, I'm done with Tobey Maguire now.
Yeah, Venom is like the most awesome villain in the Spider-Man universe, and they completely butchered it.
Yeah, they tried to be comedic with it, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was, again, according to internet rumors, the script originally didn't have Venom in it. It had the Vulture, and the studio kind of made him change it, and they didn't rewrite the whole script. They just kind of redid what they had to. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that happened to Venom, because he's such a compelling villain.
What is it about Venom that makes him... Is he the most compelling Spider-Man villain?
To me, he is, personally, because essentially he's got all of Spider-Man's powers, but better versions of them. So how do you beat that as Spider-Man?
Yeah.
And I think... And there's also the element, if you just look at Peter Parker versus Eddie Brock, there's an element of, well, what happens if a bad guy had gotten Spider-Man's powers, as opposed to somebody who's committed to doing the right thing.
Well, what about Carnage? Where does he stand up next to Venom?
Carnage, I'm actually a little less familiar with. He's more violent, and they'd almost have to go R-rated to do Carnage right. He's almost serial killer. If a serial killer got Spider-Man's powers, and Carnage, I just never got into.
Dexter Morgan.
That might be a fair comparison.
Okay. Yeah. Now, have you seen that they're looking into a Sinister Six?
Yes, I
franchise? Tell me about that.
The Sinister Six in the comic books is a group put together, I believe, by Dr. Octopus. It's 6 of Spider-Man's, top villains, and there's different incarnations of it, so it's not necessarily the same 6. It's all going to depend on what area you bring it from, but it looks like they're heading towards a Sinister Six, which I think would be great. I know a lot of people criticize when they get too many villains in, but I think in this case, I don't want to say it's exactly like Lost where they have everything planned out from the beginning, but I think they have a plan to get there now, as opposed to just, okay, well, let's do this for the next movie. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, all right, if you had to talk face-to-face with the author of this Open Culture article, and, you read the article, you know where he's coming from. What would your conversation with him sound like?
Well, one thing I would give him credit for is I do think that when they get focused on action and things like that, a lot of movie studios anymore, they really try to keep the scripts simple just for the sake of subtitles when they send them overseas. They try to keep it very basic. And sometimes I can see where that would affect the overall story. I can understand where he's coming from that area, but at the same time, I can also see with special effects, if you're going to do a car explosion, if you do it with CGI, you can do it once, as opposed to having to maybe do several takes and blowing up several cars. I can see there's advantages to that. The key to me, more than anything, is make it look real where we don't know it's special effects. If you can do that, you're in great shape.
And then how much has to be story-driven? I mean, aren't stories where you have compelling characters, people that you can relate to, or people that you emotionally invest yourself in, if there's a high-action movie, don't you still need those characters in order to really make it a film with some oomph?
Oh, yeah, story is so important. Special effects alone really doesn't get you anything.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was really his argument, was, look, it's just too many special effects, and it's ruining the genre. Although, I mean, you look back at some of those icons, Sylvester Stallone playing Rambo and the machine guns, and could you understand Sylvester Stallone in the Rambo movies?
Not really.
I mean, he just kind of mumbled, right?
Yeah.
He's like a guy that took a bunch of muscle relaxers and then went out into the swamp with a headband on.
Basically, yeah.
So that's Open Culture. If you want to go to openculture.com, I'm sure you can find the article. Again, that was called Chaos Cinema, a breakdown of how 21st century action films became incoherent. Maybe Jason and I didn't do the arguments justice, but I just think that, you have to really, if you're going to create something, create it right. And create something that I'm going to care about. Because if I want to see something get blown up, I can always waste $7 to see a Michael Bay movie. So the next thing we're going to move on to is, totally off base, but that's what the show is all about. It's going to be, semi-random. It is A&C, but it's going to be pretty much whatever we want it to be. We're going to get a little politics.
All right.
Little politics here. You ever watch American Idol?
I used to.
Okay.
Not so much lately.
Season 2. Were you in there about Season 2?
I was in there in Season 2.
All right. You remember who the finalists were in Season 2?
Yes, that was Ruben Studdard and Clay Aiken.
Ruben Studdard and Clay Aiken. Ruben Studdard won. Clay Aiken was the runner-up, but he probably had a more successful career.
I would say so.
At least initially.
Yeah.
And now Ruben Studdard's claim to fame is that he's on like The Biggest Loser and he wants to lose weight and stuff. But that's got nothing to do with what he did originally. So there is an article. It was originally by People Magazine, then Christian Science Monitor picked it up. In Christian Science Monitor, the author's name was Allison Takeda. And she wrote this article announcing the big news that Clay Aiken is considering a run for Congress in North Carolina. Did you hear about this?
Yes, I did.
Okay. The article says Clay Aiken may soon be asking for votes once more, but this time there's a little more at stake than just winning American Idol. According to a new report from the Washington Blade, the second season runner-up is mulling a run for Congress in North Carolina. The Blade claims that Aiken, 35, has consulted with political operative Betsy Conte, who first worked for former Vice President Al Gore and former North Carolina Governor Beverly Perdue. He is reportedly actively considering a bid for a seat held by GOP Representative Renee Elmers. This would not be Aiken's first brush with politics. Back in 2010, the openly gay singer spoke at a Capitol Hill briefing on behalf of the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, GLSEN, about anti-bullying legislation. I had to pause, like right there in the article, anti-bullying legislation. So he's openly gay, which is fine. He's done a lot of work with like school music programs and making sure that they stay funded. So he obviously cares a lot about public schooling. He's working with someone who has worked with Al Gore, and he would be running against a Republican. So all signs point to Clay Aiken is pretty on the left, right?
Right.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. But do you think that Clay Aiken, based on what you know about him, would be somebody that you would want representing you in Congress?
Probably not. And for me personally, whenever a celebrity gets involved in politics, I usually look the other way. I could care less. I guess what bothers me particularly about the Clay Aiken situation, and it's nothing against him personally, I just think this is more about beating the incumbent than finding a quality candidate.
So Democratic strategy?
It has absolutely nothing to do with Clay Aiken, other than the fact he's got a fan base.
So all that I could, and this is just the way my mind works, is I see Mr. Smith goes to Washington, and he's on the House floor, and he's about to give his, first speech, and he's standing in front of everybody, and he gets nervous. What happens when he gets nervous? He starts to think to himself, if I was invisible.
By the way, if you ever listen to that song, it's like the ultimate stalker song.
It's the creeper song?
Yeah, it's absolutely creepy.
You think it's creepier than Creep by Radiohead?
Probably.
Because he's talking about being a fly on the wall.
Yeah, and I could just watch you in your room.
I could just watch you. Clay Aiken's just watching you. The song comes on while somebody's at the gym, and they're changing in the locker room, and they're taking a shower. If I could just be a fly on the wall. You know what would be worse is if Clay Aiken had like a Barry White-esque voice.
What would be worse would be Ruben Studdard singing that song.
If I could just be a fly on the wall. Mm-hmm.
Then I could just watch you in your room.
If I was invisible. And that's probably where Clay Aiken's career went south. He had this extremely catchy hit, and then it was like Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, where it was like, oh, it's a really cool song, like for 5 minutes, and then once the radio had played it out, everybody began to analyze it, and they were like, this is not really a good song. Like, why did we... It took a minute for the light switch to go off. Mm-hmm. Same thing happened with Clay Aiken. Some people are going to get mad at me because I've just compared My Heart Will Go On to Clay Aiken's Invisible. David might get mad at me because he likes the top 40 stuff.
Yes, he does.
David, if you're listening to this, if you've gotten this far in the pilot episode, and this is what you're going to have to deal with next week when we get together and we go for episode 2. Invisible, My Heart Will Go On, and not equally as creepy. Although it's the same kind of thing where you think it's good for 5 minutes. Next thing you know, you're like, what? Yeah, why did I listen to that? And there's a lot of songs like that, man. Like Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Yeah, it's just one of those songs when you hear it, it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then a half hour later, when you've heard it 5 more times, it's like, yeah, I think I'm done.
It's not cool at all.
Yeah.
And that must be the formula for a successful pop song. Mm-hmm. Something totally catchy at first. Catchy kills me. Because I try to be a little bit more of a hipster music-wise, and I try to listen to a little bit of indie, but I always find myself listening to some top 40. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing that Fergie cannot do that won't get it stuck in my head.
I can't argue that. That's absolutely true.
And it's stuff that a grown man should not be singing.
Oh, I know.
I'm sitting there, my humps. No grown man should sing these songs.
And big girls don't cry.
And so, I don't know, I just had the same kind of thing with Clay Aiken. When I read this article, I thought to myself, what, political affiliation aside, I'm not going to say what I think of issues on the left or his positions or anything. All I'm gonna think about is American Idol, and it's... I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he's really politically inclined and he knows what he's talking about, but I just don't think I could get past it.
Maybe he is. He's just never portrayed himself that way. Right. And I just think it has less to do with anything Clay Aiken has to offer than what it does beating the incumbent there.
So you think it's about brand recognition entirely?
I think
know who Clay Aiken is.
I think that's a huge factor.
But then why Clay Aiken? Why didn't they get somebody with a little bit more steam behind him? Is it because he's, C-listed at this point?
I think maybe it's just the fact that he's from that area. I don't know what other options they might have. And I think if you read the article, it does mention the Blade, and they do have kind of an agenda, so maybe Clay Aiken kind of fits that. But.
Sure. So it's more about getting someone who's a prominent name, who lives in the area, and we're just going to try and run with it because really all that matters to us is we're going to take this seat from the Republicans.
That's what I think.
Okay, and I think that sounds pretty fair. If you're listening to this and you have any sort of feedback, I would love to hear, what else people might think in regards to Clay Aiken being a politician, because all I can think of him is season 2 runner-up of American Idol, and that little skinny guy that walked into the room with Simon Cowell and Paula Abdul and Randy Jackson. And I remember the look on Simon's face. He has that little smirk that he gets, when he's like, oh, here, this guy, this isn't going to go well. And then Clay sang a Luther Vandross song, and I don't remember exactly which one it was, but all of a sudden everybody was impressed, and they put him through, and he made it that far. He was like an underdog.
Yeah, I was a fan. I rooted hard for him back then.
Did you?
Yeah.
You liked the acid wash denim and pinstripe button-up thing? Or was it the super gel spike?
I just thought he was talented,
Yeah. You just thought it was the voice?
Yeah.
Did you buy his album then when it came out?
No, I didn't.
And if you were a fan of his throughout the show, why didn't you buy the record?
Well, because it was a situation, even though I liked him and I thought he was really talented, I didn't see him as a pop star. He is like a different musical genre. I don't see him like top 40.
Well, and I think that the record label probably thought that too, because when he put out that first pop album, it seemed to do okay, and that single did okay. Once people found out that it was a Creeper song and they quit listening to it, he put out a second record, and I think it was like covers of songs from the 80s, like I Can't Live If Living Is Without You, like that kind of thing. And that was the single that he put off the album. But I think he realized, it's like, all right, well, I'm a little bit more of an old soul. If I can find some grandmothers to listen to me or some middle-aged women, then I'll be all right.
I mean, I think he could do like a lot of Barry Manilow songs very well.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, he's Manilow for a new generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I've never thought of him in terms of Barry Manilow, but you're absolutely spot on. But Taylor Hicks kind of had the same fate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the Clay Aiken thing, where it's like, well, I rooted for him, by the way, in Season 5. I thought he was cool. Daughtry was in Season 5.
Yeah, that was a good year.
Catherine McPhee was in Season 5. And I think everybody wanted Daughtry to win, except they didn't vote that way.
Right.
But I wanted Taylor Hicks to win. And I thought, man, this guy's got such a unique thing going on about him. I loved his, when he went out there and acted like an idiot on stage.
Yeah.
But he still sounded good, and Simon hated him.
Yeah. He had fun doing what he was doing, and I always enjoy that.
And it was a little contagious, right?
Yeah.
Put out his record, bombed.
Oh, yeah.
I think his label dropped him after the first album. He put out a second record. I don't think anybody paid attention to it. It was put out independently. I don't even remember what it was called. And then he had a Las Vegas show. The Las Vegas show, I don't know exactly how well it went, but he's not doing it anymore. That's Britney's job.
Yeah.
And Taylor Hicks is now, I think he did like Grease on Broadway for a moment. But other than that, he hasn't done anything since. Yeah, he did Grease.
Oh, wow. That's...
He was he was Frankie Valli's character, the beauty school dropout.
Okay.
Yeah, he was that guy. I don't know why they picked him to play that part.
So not even like a big role in Grease.
No. It was like, all right, look, you get one song, but we'll give you a paycheck. You won't have to be a starving artist. We'll pretend people know who you are, that kind of thing. Oh man, for the last article that we were going to talk about today, I was really hoping David was going to be around for that because it's so up his alley. And aside from the entertainment facet of this show, where we kind of just go back and forth about music and movies and celebrities and different things that are mainstream pop culture, we're going to talk about culture in general. And so we'll kind of pick at little snafus and different things. There was a lot of, you probably saw around Christmas time, there was one guy in particular, he posted a picture of his family, and they were all on their cell phones. And it was, it was like people traveled to see each other and to be with one another, but they were all engaged in their screens.
Right.
And so the last article, the last topic is an article that was on jaredwilson.com, which is just, I think, the blog of a pastor, and it's called Why I'm Getting a Divorce in 2014. And I just thought David would have some really good insights on this.
Yes, he would.
Tell the listeners, before we get into this, tell them a little bit about David, since he's going to be on next week and he can't be here to introduce himself.
David, he has a ministerial background, and he's huge into politics, and he's big into Christian values, and I think he would definitely have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
On this article, definitely.
Well, okay. I'm going to let David introduce himself next week, but this will get you in a little bit of trouble. It's putting you on the hot seat since he's your brother.
Okay.
You can talk a little bit about him, and we'll see. David's probably going to disagree, and then he's going to throw a microphone at you next week.
That's fine.
When we get together. But I mean, how is David going to bring a unique perspective to the podcast? Like, if you could kind of separate the three of us and see, like, well, here's what we have in Jason.
Well,
here's what we have in
for one,
David.
He's got the worst taste in music.
The worst taste.
Yeah, I think so.
I made him a mixtape one time. Did I tell you about this?
No.
I at work, I said, hey, man, like, give me your top 20 songs or something. I did that for everybody. And then I ended up making them like a top 20 disc of all time music. And you're right, David, David, he's going to be so mad at us for talking about him like this. But he listens to the stuff that, it's the kind of songs that in 20 years will be on commercials.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Survivor, Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah.
Big. Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. That kind of stuff. Those like iconic tunes that everybody listens to, everybody sings probably at like sporting events and different things.
Yeah, I would say if it's ever been top 40, David listens to it.
Yeah. Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice.
Ice Ice Baby.
Not only does he know the words to Ice Ice Baby, he knows the words to the Pepsi commercial Vanilla Ice did.
No, he doesn't.
I swear to you.
David, we are next week on this program. You should probably, go ahead and study just in case you don't have these fully memorized. But you will probably end up rapping next week to Vanilla Ice's Pepsi commercial.
I got to be careful what I say about him because he'll just start sharing secrets about me next week.
Oh, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. And neither of you know me well enough where you're going to start spilling my stuff.
That's true. We'll just argue with each other, and you'll sit back and laugh.
I'll sit back and laugh. I'll be the moderator. So this Jared Wilson article, it's called Why I'm Getting a Divorce in 2014. What's the first thing you thought when you saw that headline?
Well, when you see divorce, you think, a marriage is
Right.
coming to an end.
Right. And so he corrects that.
Yes.
Immediately. He says, before you start assuming that I'm going to be leaving my wife, let me just tell you that's not the case. I'm looking to leave someone else, someone you may or may not know, someone who takes up most of my time, distracts me from spending time with my wife, and even spends time with me during the late hours of the night. Are you? Do you sit in bed with your smartphone?
Absolutely.
Tool around with it?
Absolutely.
When you wake up in the middle of the night, if you have to use the restroom or something, do you look at your phone and see if your little light's blinking?
Yeah.
I do too. Is it the first thing you check in the morning before you peel yourself off the mattress?
Usually, yeah.
Man, I am in the same
Shut
boat.
off the alarm and then grab the phone.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, 7 o'clock got here way too fast. I have to be to work in an hour. But I think I'll check my messages.
Right.
Not voicemail. I'm like Facebook. Let me check Twitter. Let me see if there's any good articles to read on.
Right.
Yeah, it's bad. And so he says her name is iPhone 5. So he's an iPhone guy. She's extremely smart, funny, reliable, and keeps me up to date with all the latest trends. And although she's always by my side, I can't help but notice that she is keeping me from spending time with the people who matter most in my life. God, my wife, my family, and my dreams. Dreams are not people. But they're obviously keeping him from doing something that he feels like he should be trying to realize outside of his cell phone screen. What do you think about this, man? This is where we're at culturally.
Yeah. What it reminded me of as I was reading it is a conversation on Twitter, and as ironic as it is to reference Twitter in this conversation, there was a conversation a couple weeks ago where people were talking about if you brought someone from like the 1800s through time to present day, what do you think they would struggle with the most?
Caden Leopold, right?
And I wish I remember who gave this answer because I thought it was brilliant, and I wish I could give them credit. But they said, we carry around a device in our pocket that has all of the information known to man, and we use it to look at pictures of strangers' cats.
At videos of cats?
Yes. And, the internet can be a wonderful thing. There's a lot of information out there, and I use Facebook as a communication tool. It's not really a time-wasting tool, but for a lot of people it can be, and I try to entertain. And Twitter is also, if you use it right, Twitter's very informative.
Yeah.
So, at the same time, it can also be a time-wasting site. And I guess it all depends on what you're getting out of your cell phone time. One bad habit I have is whenever I grab my phone, the first thing I do isn't Facebook, Twitter, or communicate with anyone. It's Candy Crush. And the reason for that,
Candy Crush guy.
And the reason for that is because you only get 5 games, so I want to use those first, so my games start resetting that much faster while I'm doing the other stuff.
I do the same thing with. Have you played the DC game Injustice?
No, I haven't. I want to. It's just way too much of a download for my phone.
Man, it's a huge download.
Yeah.
It really is. But I've got it on my phone. It's like Mortal Kombat with DC characters.
Yeah, it looks incredible.
It's cool until a certain point because the Joker will just murder you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's no getting around him. You could have full life. He could have the most tiny bit of life. You could have punched him for 5 minutes, and it's like he pulls an Ali where he beats you in the last couple seconds of the match by pulling out a gun and shooting you in the head, and you're done.
Well, that would do it.
Doesn't matter if you're Nightwing or the Flash or Lex Luthor in his big mechanical suit. Boom! Goodbye. So it takes up a lot of my time too, man. I think my wife gets frustrated sometimes because I tend to have a very one-track mind. Like if I'm focused on one thing, everything around me just kind of tunes out. And she's not like that. She's always very aware of everything. So if she's, giving one of our kids attention and they are needing attention, the other one needs attention, and they're calling her from another room, she knows, I've got to go here, I've got to go here, I've got to do this. I've got laundry downstairs. She's got the list, the checklist of things that she needs to do, and she's willing to, like, any obstacles that kind of confront her, make sure that she takes care of them also. Not me at all. Like, I am, if I'm reading something, I could have one of my kids yelling my name and my wife saying something to me, and I'm not going to hear it. Are you like that at all?
Yeah, I get focused on one thing, and that's pretty much it.
Do you think it's just a guy thing?
I think so.
So this is probably the reason why this guy is saying he's leaving iPhone 5.
Yeah, I mean, I understand his point because, honestly, there's a lot of stuff I can waste my time with my phone, and, if I use that time for something else, obviously that'd be a good thing for me, but there's also a lot of useful things I get. It wouldn't even be something I would want to do to just get rid of my phone for a week and disconnect. It wouldn't be practical. But I could make better use of my time with my phone.
I work in sales, and I'll tell you, like, my emails are constantly coming to my phone. I'm constantly checking them. Even on the weekends when I'm off, I'm getting emails sometimes from work, and I'm checking them. I use my phone for navigation because I am in sales. I travel around, and I need to know where I'm going because often I have no clue. It saves me in every aspect, but sometimes I feel like, you remember the Batman movie? Which one was it? Was it 3 that had Riddler and Two-Face?
Yeah. Yes.
And Jim Carrey's Riddler had that box thing that you stuck to your forehead.
Right.
And it kind of drained your brain, and it kept you zombified all day.
Yeah.
Don't you feel sometimes like cell phones do that?
Yeah, because there's times I'll have my cell phone in my hand, and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
It's like I've done everything, so I got to find something else to do.
Or you pointlessly just refresh your news feed and see if like an article or two has popped up that you didn't see before.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is weird that I do is there's a website I go to read all my rumors about superhero movies, but I also follow it on Twitter, just in case.
Jason's going to be single for a long time.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
He's like, well, I could be out and about looking for a woman, but I might miss some superhero news.
Who would watch my TV?
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad I didn't go on a date last night. Denzel Washington might be Jon Stewart.
Oh, man.
That's okay, man. I think that if anything, heaven forbid, ever happened to my relationship, I would probably be a hermit. I would live in an apartment. I'd be like Sean Connery in Finding Forrester. I would just like never leave, and I would have someone buy my groceries, and I would sit around and read comic books. I might have to go out in order to buy new comic books once they were already read.
I think you can subscribe.
You can subscribe?
I think so.
Is there like a Netflix of comics type service?
I think you can actually go to the Marvel website and just, get a subscription like a magazine, and it just comes to your house.
Now, how often do they send them?
That I don't know.
Because wouldn't it be a good idea to have like a Netflix of comic books?
I was thinking earlier we need like a Netflix for pizza.
For pizza?
Yeah, just get one monthly fee. You can get a pizza every day.
Oh, okay. But it's not something you could send back.
Right.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to send it back, but
yeah, man, that's a lot of pizza. You'd be tired of pizza. Do you think you could get tired of pizza?
Eventually I would, yeah.
My daughter, my son had a birthday party recently. No, it was my daughter's. I'm getting kind of turned around. But on December 5th, she had a birthday, and then that weekend we had a birthday party, and we invited 12 or 15 people over, 12 to 15. And so I called the pizza place, and I said, hey, my favorite pizza place in town. I said I need enough pizza for 12 to 15 guests at this party. So they gave me, all right, well, this is how many pizzas you're going to want based on the number you're giving us. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm assuming everybody's going to eat their fill, right?
Right.
So I get like 7 pizzas, and we bring them in, and everybody, like all 12 to 15 guests, go through like a pizza and a half. We have a lot of pizza left over.
Everybody had one piece.
Yeah, everybody had like a piece. And so I'm like, all right, guys, anybody want to take a pizza home with them? Because we got a lot left over. Oh, no, we're good. We're all good. And it's not because the pizza was bad. This is the best pizza in town. Best pizza in Mishawaka. It's Bruno's on Edison.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that store makes superior pizza than the other Bruno stores for some reason.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
You been there?
Yeah.
Okay. And, I'm thinking, well, this is cool. I mean, I'm going to have lunch tomorrow, and I really like this pizza, so I could even make it dinner tomorrow. And I probably went like a day and a half. All I ate was pizza.
Uh-huh.
I haven't been able to touch that pizza since.
Yeah, I could see that.
We had that. I mean, I'd call my wife, and I come home for lunch sometimes from work. What are you cooking, honey? I'm not cooking anything. There's pizza in the fridge. Oh, pizza again. All right, well, at least it's Bruno's. And I'm telling you, man, that week I got so sick of that pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Done with it.
But the pizza conversation is another good one that David would enjoy.
Yeah, David does like pizza. He's got a famous quote. I'll let him be the one to say it about pizza. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, inside jokes. We'll get it all out there next week. But this article, the way that he wraps it up, he basically says that, not everyone struggles with the cell phone thing. You could even probably extend it to like tablets and different things. It's really the internet and just being engaged interactively that people struggle with probably. But he says, I hope you will take this into consideration regardless. He says, learn to balance your time. Learn to balance the time you spend with your phone. Make your phone an accessory rather than a priority. And I feel often like it's a priority. I feel like it's part of my arm.
Yes.
Like if I put it down for a few minutes, I'm going to be worrying about what's happening on the end of it. Give yourself limitations as to when and where your phone can be used. Control how you use your phone and stop allowing your phone to control you. And try spending parts of your weekends unplugged, offline, and away from your mobile device. In 2014, I vow to divorce my phone. Will you join me? Will you join him?
No.
You're not going to join him?
No.
I'm not going to join him either.
No. And I respect what he's trying to do.
Yeah, me too.
But it's not for me.
It's kind of, and you see this often with Christian authors. They have really good intentions, and I can't get down. It was like in high school, there was this popular book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye, and it was this guy who basically, he's like, I'm going to find the right woman when she comes along, but right now I'm going to kiss dating goodbye. I'm going to focus on God and all this stuff. And, like, I had the same reaction of, man, it's really good intentions, but I liked girls a lot. I wasn't going to stop dating.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of stories about this kind of thing, about people constantly being on their phone, and a lot of people complaining about when you go out to dinner, people getting the phone out, and I can understand why that's rude. And I heard what people are starting to do is when they go out for dinner, everyone will put their cell phone in the middle of the table, and the first person to grab theirs has to pay the bill for everyone.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that would keep people off their phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's a really good idea. I might have to use that.
Yeah.
There are retreats now where you can, like a weekend getaway where they take your cell phone at the door and you're not allowed to do any sort of checking emails or anything the entire time you're there. It's like yoga, a lot of holistic practices, getting back to nature, that kind of stuff, and just more simple living. Mm-hmm. They have one out in California that's doing it pretty frequently. And people seem to really be engaged in it because I think that, the more people get engaged in technology, like we have this desire to know everything and to know what's going on, which is why we get plugged in. But then there's this conflicting part of us that's like that wants to get back to the simpler things, right?
Yeah, because I think it is more the internet that you can do on the cell phone that's really got why people get so connected to it. Because essentially, if we just had phones for making phone calls, we wouldn't use them that much. And essentially, for me, it would just be, if there's an emergency, someone can reach me. But since I can do Facebook and Twitter and everything else, and I constantly check mine. And it is more the internet than the phone itself that makes it such a distraction.
Well, that kind of wraps up that topic. I wonder how many of the people listening to this are actually going to divorce their phones in 2014, or actually going to minimize that.
If you do, just make sure you still find a way to listen to the podcast.
Absolutely. Do you listen to your podcasts on your phone?
I will.
Yeah. You're going to listen to yourself?
Yes.
I didn't podcast before. You're going to be that meme with the Dos Equis guy or whatever. I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I host it.
Yes.
It's going to be that guy. Well, next week we'll have David with us, which will kind of, this will be the holy trinity of podcasting on this yet-to-be-named podcast. Yeah. And hopefully by then we will have a name.
Yes. Much like the family on Malcolm in the Middle, we don't have a name.
And so we'll get the name thing nailed down hopefully in the next week. I think what I would like to do And you tell me if you have any ideas, but I would like to, instead of me finding a few articles or whatever, like I'll find an article, you and David find something that you want to talk about, and we'll just have kind of a show and tell.
I think we can all bring something to the table. I think that's great.
Yeah. We won't have our thoughts as gathered.
Right.
I guess. It'll make it more impulsive, more spontaneous, so I make it a little bit more fun to get into. All right. Well, before we close up the episode, the pilot episode of the Yet to Be Named podcast, is there anything that you want to say about the direction that we're going to move or how you want this podcast to look and where people can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at the McDLT, and I will keep that username up until the point McDonald's threatens a lawsuit.
And on Facebook?
On Facebook, I'm just Jason Murrell.
You're just Jason Murrell.
Yeah.
The McDLT is exclusive to Twitter.
Pretty much, yeah.
Where'd you come up with that handle?
David used to call himself the Big Mac because he was the Mac Daddy. And so he went through this phase where he started calling me different McDonald's items, out of randomly. Like, one day it was just sausage biscuit. And so one day he said the McDLT, and I thought, it keeps the hot stuff hot and the cool stuff cool. That's what I do, baby. So...
At least he didn't name you after a character like Grimace.
Right.
He didn't say, hey, Grimace. Sausage biscuit. Sounds a lot cooler. McDLT, that's a suave name. Yeah. That's a cool name. You're like, I pack the calories of love. All right. Well, my name is Joe Ruiz. I'm with Jason Murrell. And we hope that you guys will continue to give this podcast a chance and listen to us as we move forward. And let us know if there's any interesting arts and culture type pieces that you would like us to talk about on the show moving forward. Or if you have any fun name suggestions, go ahead and get them to @the McDLT on Twitter.